Hey everybody, this is Steve coming to you from the Worley Bugger Fly Company again with our quarantine fly tying series that we have going on for you. Today I am doing a iconic pattern called the Patriot. This is an attractor fly that was originated by kind of a semi-famous author, fly fisherman from the East Coast named Charles Meck. And this fly has really influenced me over my fly fishing career. Absolutely fantastic. Tied a couple of different ways. I'm going to show you both ways. It's tied his original style series with kind of classic Catskill style where the hackle is wound around the shank of the fly, and then also parachute style. Both are very, very good flies. Attractor style flies are basically flies that don't necessarily, and they're not built to mimic any one particular insect. This is a great summertime fly on streams and rivers across the Pacific Northwest, Montana, Idaho. I've had fantastic luck with it, and like I said, it's influenced a couple of other patterns, my yak stone, which we're going to bring to you later this week. So we're going to get started here, and I'm going to show you how to tie the Patriot. Okay, so let's get started with the Patriot. So in the vise here, I have the standard kind of original version. This fly is tied commercially from several different fly tying companies, but you mainly find it in parachute style. But this is the original Patriot of how Charles Meck fashioned it. And one thing that I can tell you about this fly is you can't really substitute any of the colors. The blue and the red are definitely absolutely crucial in the success of this fly, and really what make it the true attractor pattern that it is. Attractor patterns, of course, like I said in the beginning of the video, are really kind of, they're patterns that don't mimic any one necessarily certain insect. They're just mimicking a food source, and it's the actual colors that the fish are actually drawn to. So what you're going to need is standard dry fly hook. In the vise here, I put in a Hannock 130 BL, and you can start off with some either 6/0 or 8/0 red thread, either uni or ultra thread. This happens to be uni. It would really depend on the size of the fly that you were tying in Patriot style. So the size for Patriots, really, I mean, probably should be somewhere between a size 12 and a size 16. Tied any bigger than that or any smaller probably wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, especially the times of year that you're fishing this fly. Basically, from about the time caddis are around in May till October. So wind your thread on, get a good thread base, just like I did here. The first thing that you're going to add is some brown tailing fiber for the tail. So you're going to take them off of a tailing feather, get it up here. Basically, you want your tail to be about the size, same length as your shank, so you can lay it up on top to get your measurement, get it where you wanted, pinch it, and then lay it down on your shank. Get it bound down real well, and you can cut off these excess fibers here. And then work your thread back to the bend where you started, and your tail should be in place. So the next thing that you're going to need are about 5 or 6 strands of crystal flash, and this is smoke blue. And this is absolutely crucial. You cannot use any other material. You can't use any other color. I mean, you can, but you're not going to be fishing the Patriot, and it's not going to be as effective. So tie in about 5 or 6 strands of this, and it really helps. This is kind of a really odd material to use as a body wrapping because it doesn't like to really stay together. But if you take and kind of wet your hands with a little saliva and then just run it through, that will kind of help bind them together. And you're going to take and start wrapping your body. Try to keep those crystal flash fibers together as you're wrapping it. Try to keep you can kind of twist it a little bit too. That will kind of help you keep the body nice and tight. And you're just trying to form kind of a mayfly type body, kind of round, cylinder kind of shape. Once you've got that on there, bind it back down, and you'll get several flies, out of, a half shank of crystal flash that you're using. So make sure that you bind that down really good. And after you have it done, take and do a little half hitch there and then cut it real close. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to form your red tag in the middle of the body. So approximately just start working your thread around the body of the fly. And you can cut that tag end off. And you want to form a nice little red tag. It doesn't have to be super thick, just lay 8 or 10 wraps on there. And then you're going to take again and half hitch. Okay. These hooks are super sharp. If you get anywhere near that point, it's going to cut your thread, just like it did for me right there. Just re-thread this real quick. So the next thing, this doesn't really call for the original pattern, because when this fly was originally tied over 30 years ago, there was no such thing as UV glue. But since it's kind of a synthetic material, what I like to do is coat the body, and this is Solarez Bone Dry. Just kind of helps protect it. Bigger trout, they get their teeth in that and can kind of tear it up a little bit. So just put a little bit of UV glue on there, and then just take your light and fry it. And that kind of binds your body and makes it quite a bit more durable for you. Okay, so once that's all dry, then reattach your thread right to the back there, right where you tied that half hitch at, to stop it. Okay. So the original pattern that Charles tied had a calf tail wing. Calf tail's somewhat difficult to work with. It takes a lot of time and stacking and getting the hairs proportionate and getting them even. So what I'm going to use today is I'm going to use a piece of polypropylene yarn, which is a floating yarn. It's fantastic. It's not a lot of flotation really to add into this body, since it's, since it's built mainly from synthetic material. So we're going to use this as a flotation, give the fly a little bit more. Building this Catskill style, with the hackle wrapped around it, you're going to be wanting to fish it like in faster, more turbulent water. So this is going to help in the, the flotation. So take your poly yarn out, and this is a hairline product that they treat actually too with a water shed agent, waterproofing agent that makes it even more waterproof. So kind of, you don't need a huge wing on this fly, but enough as a visual tool that you'll be able to see it in that rougher water. So take out a piece and wrap it around your thread there, and then pull that down. And it's going to want to kind of splay into two different wings, kind of wolf style. If you know who Lee Wolf was, he was real famous for the Wolf series of flies that had a split wing, mainly calf tail, but this polypropylene is really nice to work with. It's really super durable, and like I said, adds some waterproofing abilities to your fly. So what you're going to want to do is just kind of figure eight that like I'm doing, through the wing, get that bound down to the shank really well, and then you can trim a little bit of it out of there. Just don't trim too much. You don't want that wing to get too small. You can kind of do the adjustments at the end, after the fly is all complete. So right now the Patriot should look like this. So the next thing that you're going to need is a brown hackle, either a saddle hackle or a rooster. This just happens to be, a long saddle hackle. And you can kind of lay it around the shank of the fly to see, kind of get your measurement and see that you got. If you don't have a hackle tool, just lay it around the shank there, and that'll give you a good idea of if the hackle is sized appropriately. So it should be kind of corresponding with the height of your wing and the bottom of your point here. If it's too big, it's going to ride really awkwardly in the water. So take and strip off just a few of the fibers, okay, from the end, and lay that right back behind the wing and bind it down. If that stem's a little long, you can clip that out of there. Don't crowd your head. Make sure that you have plenty of room in the front there to finish the fly off, not add a bunch of bulk to it. Okay, so the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to palmer this. If you get a few of these fibers that are sticking out, you can kind of trim those a little bit before you wrap your hackle. So you want to try and wrap this, and get a good amount of hackle wrapped around there, because that's what's going to really create the buoyancy of this fly, when you're fishing it in faster kind of summer water in a small stream, or even on the Yakima. This is a great fly in the summer. Catch lots and lots of big fish on this fly. Like I said, it was really influenced me a lot. You can probably find, if you look on the internet, Fly Fisherman Magazine did an article on this fly well over 25 years ago in their magazine. They used to have in the back there, they'd feature one fly in every issue, and I just happened to I happened to catch that that issue, and that's how I got turned on to it. And it's absolutely one of my favorites for sure. Like I said, it's influenced me a ton. So, a couple wraps of brown hackle in the front, a couple in the back. Creates your nice kind of Catskill style traditional dry fly. Once you get that bound down, then you can either whip finish it or half hitch, whichever you prefer. Pull it down tight and get up there and cut your thread off. Anything kind of funky. So now you can kind of do a measurement here. You can see that the wing is still pretty long when I trimmed it down originally. So go right just over the top of your hackles. You don't want to cut the tops of your hackles, and trim that wing down. And now you have a nice kind of wolf style split wing Patriot Charles Meck summertime fly. So this is the original version, standard version. Stay tuned, and I'm going to show you how to tie the parachute style. Okay, so in the vise now is the updated version of the Patriot. This is the version in most fly shops around the country. This is probably what you're going to find. There's a few commercial companies out there that have gotten onto this fly and are actually starting to produce it. So your favorite fly shops around the country, especially around the West, you probably will find this fly in there. If you're not a commercial tire, or you are a tire, this is a good one to tie up. Or if you don't have time, purchase a few, put them in your box, and you won't regret it. So the parachute style version is, pretty good for flatter water, stuff that's not quite so turbulent. But with the post on there, you can still see it really, really well. And the polypropylene yarn is going to help it float, of course, and keep it up on the surface. So first thing is, lay down your thread base again. We're using a standard dry fly hook. This is a Hannock 130 BL barbless, super sharp. So first thing you're going to want to do again is add your brown tail from some tailing fibers. Pull off, about 6 or 8 of them. Get your measurement. Proportions, of course, I always stress that, and whenever I'm doing videos, keep your proportions pretty accurate in your flies. They just look better, and they'll fish better too, especially on picky fish. So tie down your tails there, bind them down. And then again, grab you can kind of see how this stuff can be a little bit more difficult to work with, this crystal flash. So if you take and wet it just with some saliva, be careful, you might get the corona. That just helps keep them bound together. It's just a little bit easier to work with. Okay, so again, tie it in, wrap forward. Cover up all your red thread there on your body, just so you have that smolt blue color. And trim off your excess. And then make a couple other thread wraps, just make sure that's going to bind and stay down for you. Make a half hitch here and tie this off. This is another spot too where you could use, if you wanted to, you could use a separate bobbin instead of having to half hitch with red thread on it. So start your red thread right in the middle of your Patriot there, and make 8 or 10 wraps just where you make a nice tag, you know, in the middle. It's going to show. And then half hitch it. And then I like to just cut it as close as you can. Again, a little bit of UV glue on the top. It's nice you have this brush. You can really kind of control where it goes and how much you get on there. Again, that'll just kind of help bind the material. It's a synthetic, you know, so the trout, they can get their teeth in there and kind of, especially big trout, they get their teeth in that crystal flash and kind of tear your fly up a little bit. So this will just help it make more durable, dries instantly. Okay, so now you're ready to reattach your thread. So you got a parachute post that you're going to put in between your body and the eye of your hook here. So again, grab your polypropylene yarn. This kind of comes in strips, so you can make a couple of cuts with it. Just even up the tips and then chop it, and then you can kind of work it in your fingers, get any of those loose funky fibers out of there, and then just lay it right around your thread there, and then just pull it right down right where you want it on the base of your fly. You don't have to worry so much about crowding the hook eye here, because this is going to be a parachute post. And polypropylene is really nice to work with too. It's, you know, when you're creating parachute style flies. So when you get this tied in, you feel like it's bound really tight to the shank. Then you want to start making some thread wraps around the base of the poly yarn, where you can create a kind of a thread dam, thread base for your hackle to wrap around. So it gives something to bind to it. Okay. If this gets kind of long for you, you can trim it out of the way if you need to. I usually just wait until the end of the fly, and then I finish trimming it all off. So the next thing you're going to want is your brown saddle hackle. Just strip off some of the fibers from the quill so they're exposed. And you're going to want to point that. You're going to want to start this at the bottom. So start wrapping that quill in there. Get it wrapped in tight around the base, and pull that thread tight. You can see that little piece of the quill sticking up there. We'll chop that out. Okay, so now you're ready to wrap your hackle around your post. This is really what's going to give your fly flotation. make a half dozen wraps, and then you can get that tied off right against the post. Trim off your hackle. And then you can either whip finish it or put in a couple half hitches there. Cut your thread. And now you can kind of clean up your fly. You can cut that post, get it kind of nice and straight. I like to trim them down just so you get a little bit of visibility out of that post, you know, riding, you know, especially in glary situations, and then it'll ride upright too and ride correctly. So there you go. There's the Patriot parachute. Great attractor pattern. If you haven't tied this one up before, I would definitely 12s through 16s. This will quickly become a favorite of your box and your arsenal for summer fishing, especially where there's big cutthroat and big rainbows.